Welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. Today we are doing a beta read in Concrit for CMA6725, Love Spice in the Zorro fandom. And it looks like the relationship here is Diego de la Vega and Victoria Escalante. And we're looking at no rating warnings. So we've got 12,992 words in 3 chapters. We're just doing a first chapter, beta reading Concrit. There's 7 comments on here, 13 kudos, 234 hits. CMA6725 mentioned that Zorro was not a super well-known, I guess, fandom. I watched the movie, and it says TV. I feel like I watched Zorro episodes when I was a kid, so... But it's been years, so we'll see what I can do here. Let's dive in. Summary. DeSoto decides on a new and unexpected trap for Zorro. Don Alejandro considers starting a theater company. Diego has an idea about how to marry the woman he loves. Victoria gets a brilliant idea about how to secretly unmask her hero. Mendoza is hungry. Things don't happen in this order. Interesting. Notes, disclaimer, I don't own the characters, no copyright infringements, no money, writing for fun. The ideas are the writers, the authors. I do not agree to anyone copying them or the story. Story was written as part of my Valentine's Day challenge story, complying with the following requirements just to prove it's possible. Acceptable genres. Victoria cooks. Don Alejandro bumps his head. Felipe runs interference. This almost sounds funny. The alcalde has his plan thwarted. Mendoza rides on tornado. Diego or Zorro is shirtless at some point. Okay. Includes an unexpected spin on the already classic kiss reveal. Zorro by kissing Diego. This sounds funny, actually. Okay. Must be published in full by February 14th. Maximum 3 chapters. Got it. Okay. Must have a happy ending. All right. A big thank you to La Cuidara for her corrections and input. Enjoy and let me know if you do. Chapter 1. It was spring, and, as every year, Victoria Escalante was thoroughly cleaning the tavern. This particular year, however, she had also decided time had come for her to finally open and at least partially empty the big trunk which still held her dead parents' earthly belongings. Many years had passed since her mother's death. Fewer since her father's, yet Victoria had, thus far, been unable to bring herself to actually go through their things or to give away anything of theirs. But she knew it was finally time to do so. Taking a deep breath for courage, she stared a few seconds at the door to the pantry in which the trunk had remained for years, hidden under sacks of flour and beans, keeping his mysteries away from prying eyes. "Good morning, Victoria," she heard Diego's voice just as she was about to enter the pantry. "Diego," she exclaimed with a start, "what are you doing here?" "I was just heading for the Guardian's office and was wondering if you had, by any chance, finished your column for the next edition," he replied innocently. "Oh, no. To be fair, I was so busy with spring cleaning that I completely forgotten," she confessed. "But I promised to get to it this afternoon. I hope it's not too late." "That's quite all right, Victoria. There are still a couple days before I print it," Diego answered. I'm going to pause right here. This is reading really, really well. It's very clean. Spring is lowercase unless we are, it's not a name. So I don't believe we capitalized just it being spring. Other than that, generally speaking, this looks very good and it's reading very well. There was a little word echo on theirs, being twice, but that's being honestly petty. The sentence still works fine, but that's one of the things that like my brain is programmed to look for. So I noticed it, and so I'm just going to mention it. But honestly, these are trivial. I mean, for fan fiction, this is excellent. We're going to roll right on. For the learning curve, we'll point out little details just for my brain is trained to pick them up, and to help us become better writers, we want to know about them. Okay, and that's what we're here to do, is learn about while writing in fan fiction and for fun. Okay. All right, so Victoria, all right. There are still a couple of days before I print it, Diego answered. Diego, she asked, just as he was about to turn and leave. Would you would you mind staying? I need to go through a certain trunk I haven't opened in many years. Since mother died and father left Los Angeles, I could do with some company. The caballero pretended to hesitate for a few seconds before answering. Of course. In my company, if my company will keep you away from dark thoughts, I'd be honored to help. The taverness smiled, and with the boost of confidence she felt at having Diego there, she opened the door to the pantry and headed straight for the trunk. Let me help you, Diego offered as he took off his jacket and started moving away, the sacks obstructing her way. Moving away the sacks. Okay. There's nothing wrong with this sentence. Um, I guess what happens is my brain, it's probably just my brain, maybe the way it's wired. Whatever, away and way, my brain hangs up on them even when I read them. And maybe that's not normal people. I don't know. Could be just me. But there's nothing wrong with that sentence. That is all me. We're going to keep going. As he finished, Victoria offered him a grateful smile and took out the key fitting the big lock sealing the contents of the truck from the outside world. As she got it open, Diego opened the lid to uncover a small treasure of objects which instantly reminded Victoria of happier times, when both her parents were alive and her brothers were still with her. Okay, I'm going to pause there. As he finished, Victoria offered him a grateful smile. I guess it's the word echo on opened is the only, again, this is very minute, very trivial, but I'll just note it and we're going to keep going. My mother's wedding dress was the first thing she uttered as she took out an antiquated yet still beautiful red dress. Just underneath it was her father's wedding suit, and under that several small boxes filled with various objects, varying from combs and mother-of-pearl jewels to family portraits. You painted this one, she stated as she took out a family portrait made when she was about 14 years old. Yes, I remember it, Diego confirmed, smiling at seeing it. It was never my best work, I'm afraid. You're wrong, she contradicted him. I think it's the best portrait I have of them, and look how beautifully you've painted me. This should hang in the tap room just above the bar. Will you help me with it? Certainly, the caballero agreed, and soon enough they were both admiring the family portrait as it hung from a nail Diego had just planted in Victoria's wall. Son, Don Alejandro called from the doorway just a few moments later. Felipe and I need your help to unload the wagon, unless you have something more important to do. Oh, Father, I was actually just helping Victoria, he answered. It's all right, Don Diego. You've already done more than enough. I can continue by myself. Go help Don Alejandro, the taverness encouraged him. The tall caballero nodded and followed his father to the plaza. I haven't interrupted anything, have I? Don Alejandro wondered, somewhat hopeful. No, Father, don't worry. For all Victoria knows, I'm nothing but her friend, and that is how I need to keep things until I no longer have a price on my head, he replied. You really should tell her soon, Diego. She does love you, son. Even if she has no idea it is you under that mask, the Don encouraged him. I know, Father. It's not her love, I doubt. My only concern is for her safety, as you very well know. My son, you'll have to tell her one day, and the more you wait, the more chances there are for her temper to get the best of her when you will. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure she'll forgive you for having deceived her just as I have, because, like me, she too will understand that all you did was in order to protect us. But you've already wasted more than 8 years, son. 8 years you could have spent with the woman you love. Leave the Lancers to their job, and finally live the life you were meant to live, Don Alejandro told him. Okay. It's working. I'm going to say what is just popping through my head. And I'm saying this because it's something that I too have to work on. A lot of the things that I point out to you guys are things that I have learned from my own writing, honestly here in the fandom with beta readers and discussion, and honestly studying. I pull out books and I read and I learn and I read articles and things like that. So one of the things is, and I'm super guilty of this in some of my past fics, and I'm probably going to do a separate video talking about my own mistakes. So this isn't necessarily a mistake, but we've had son here, and we've had son here, and we've had son again in the same paragraph. And while that seems silly, and this is technically fine, um, I have learned that when we write as we speak, we write the same way that we would speak, and um, we don't actually use people's names as often as we think we do. Now, I typically use them. I've overused them in writing as frequently as this, if not more so, ridiculously. In some, even a more recent fic that I wrote a couple years ago, I did it. I found that I did it a lot, but you don't have to do it. It works fine without it. You know that it's only the two of them talking, so we don't actually need to say it unless it happens to be this character talks that way, and maybe um, uh, maybe that's just how he speaks. It can also be cultural. Um, some cultures use the names, and if they're doing especially if they're doing a formal speaking, then they might use the name repeatedly. A lot of times I will try to use in everyday language when I'm calling someone's name. We all know we use it to get someone's attention. Sometimes I'll do it to also make sure that the person knows I know their name, especially when I'm first meeting them. But when we write, sometimes we do use it too much. It's something a tip I read a long time ago, and I didn't really pay much heed to it. I just kind of noted it. But then as I learned different skills, more things in my writing become apparent to me, and I realized I do overuse that. So we're going to get back in the story here. You are forgetting the alcalde. Is it alcalde? We're going to go with alcalde. I apologize if that's incorrect. You are forgetting the alcalde, father. Ignacio did change a little after he shot Gilberto. Zorro is no longer needed as much as before, but I would hardly trust him to have made a radical turn, Diego replied as they reached the back of the church where Felipe was waiting for them with the wagon. I'm guessing this is a little break. I don't think I'm supposed to say the Z's. I put like little asterisks or little dots on mine. I think this is that's cute. We're going to move on. In the meantime, rummaging through the trunk, Victoria found a few things she had no memory of ever seeing before, including a cooking notebook filled with what seemed like one of her grandmother's recipes. When Diego returned later that afternoon, after having helped his father with a second transport of donated goods, she was immersed in the study of the notebook, having already forgotten her promise to get to the advice column. Do you need any help? Diego wondered as she confessed to him that she still hadn't started writing. Victoria eyed him teasingly and nodded, then headed for a box in her kitchen where she held the letters addressed to Donna Corazon. Let's see. There is one from a woman asking for advice on how to get the attention of a man she loves, but who doesn't even know she exists, and another from a man asking what to do to rekindle the romance with his wife. What do you think, Don Diego? What I think, he answered pensively, is that for many men, as they say, love goes through the stomach. So maybe that's what your first reader should do. Cook a splendid meal for the man she loves, and I doubt he'll ever again forget that she exists. As for the second, I'm not an expert in marriages, but from what I remember about my parents, father used to bring mother flowers and take her on romantic picnics every week. They had their little spot he refused to share with anyone else. He'd always leave with a book of poetry, and they both wore a big smile upon their return, seemingly even more in love than they had been when they had left. I really like this. It's a long paragraph, but I really like the whole setting, the memory and the feel of it. It's very sweet. I like it a lot. We're gonna keep going here. That is actually very good advice, Victoria agreed. Diego, how come after seeing how your parents were together and how much they loved each other, you've still never considered getting married? Who says I didn't? He asked. You mean that woman Zafira? She wondered. Yes, I did almost marry her in Madrid. For a brief period of time I had fancied myself in love with her, he replied. But I am glad things turned out as they did. It was for the best. Why do you think so? Well, what I felt for Zafira was not love, you see. I liked and admired her. I loved that she loved me, and back then I believed that is what love feels like. Now I know I was wrong. You do? How? Now I know what love truly is. I know the difference. But Diego, you have never courted a woman since you came back. You told me you loved someone who loved another man, but I do have to wonder, what do you think love is? Love, Victoria, is when you are capable of always putting the other person first. For a man, it is when the woman he loves is his first and last thought every day, as he wakes up in the morning and goes to sleep in the evening. It's when he's able to put her happiness before anything else, even his own desires. When he is willing to let her go, if that is what it takes for her to be happy, even if he knows he'd never be able to love or be happy with anyone else, Diego replied. And Victoria just stared at him. You truly are in love, aren't you? She asked. Okay, that sentence back here, this is reading really well and I really like it, so it's hard for me to actually stop and pick at this. This one sentence is a little bit long. We could probably break it up into two, but again, these are such small. The flow here is good, the story is good, the building romance is very nice. This is a very good piece. So we're gonna point out the little tiny things and we're just gonna keep rolling along. You truly are in love, aren't you? She asked. Diego just smiled and nodded, but the taverness didn't know how to feel about his confession. There was something both comforting and disturbing about the idea that her best friend felt that way about a woman, and the question about who that man was started to truly bug her. Senorita, Mendoza interrupted them. I was wondering if you had any food left after lunch. It would be a shame to waste it. Now, if that reader of yours was trying to gain the attention of our friend here, I am quite certain my advice would be perfect for her, Diego told Victoria with a grin, somewhat relieved that the sergeant had interrupted them. Victoria chuckled and headed for the kitchen to prepare a plate for Mendoza. That was when, thinking about her friend's words, she remembered how he had glanced towards her before he told Zafira that there was someone else in his life. The next thing she knew, she was thinking about how he always seemed to be around, visiting the tavern almost every day, happy to give her a hand with whatever she needed. And in that moment, Victoria had an epiphany. Diego was in love with her. Okay, so I read the sentence a little bit different than you've got it. I might have moved these three little dots right after between here, love and with her. Yeah, I think I'd do that because that's how I read it, and I like reading it that way, but that's just me. And then I think there was a long sentence back in here. Again, very trivial. It read smoothly. I was able to follow it, but my brain was also screening for anything that I needed to point out. So here we keep going. It all fit, if that was the case. His refusal to get married, his constant gravitation around her, the confession that the woman he loved was in love with another. It all made sense. She smiled at first as she finished plating Mendoza's food, but then started worrying about that discovery. What was she to do with such knowledge when her heart already belonged to another man? Or did it? On one hand, Zorro was brave and dashing, romantic and heroic, amazing in every way as far as she was concerned. She had already agreed to marry him, but he was still a complete mystery to her, not even trusting her with his true identity. I'm going to pause and compliment something really quick. I like this thing where she's plating his food. So when we're writing and we're trying to figure out what our characters are doing, there's a scene playing out in our heads, and a lot of times we get caught up in facial expressions, and that's good. We want to describe those, but our best writing and our writing really, really shines when we get them moving. And here he's given her I don't know if the writer's male or female. The author has given them an action, and it's a very natural action. It really, this is good. This flow is really nice. I am enjoying it. Okay, here we go. She had already agreed to marry him. All right, here we go back to this. Diego, on the other hand, was her oldest and dearest friend, dependable and always kind to everyone. He was not much of a fighter, but that had not stopped him from challenging a master swordsman to defend her. If he truly was, as she suspected, in love with her, and his idea of love was as he had described it for her, Victoria could very well imagine a happy life by his side. The sentence works. It's beautiful. I really like the paragraph. I'm loving the sentiment. I like the subtle gentleness and the ease in here. I really like it. The build is good. If I'm going to say this, whenever I write now, not in my past. And if we look back at my fanfic, we're going to see a train wreck, okay? We'll see a good beginning for a writer from where I was then to, and you'll see growth to where I am now. So that's why I go back and forth about whether or not I want to revise my pieces. This right here is just a little bit wordy. So it's really, really good and it works. But from a learning aspect, if we read through our work out loud before we publish it, we're going to be able to find anything that someone might stumble over. I might have read this perfectly seamlessly if I was reading it to myself. Reading it out loud, I tripped over it a little bit and I had to think through why that was. I think it's just maybe these tiny words. I guess there were so many that I tripped up on it when I was reading it out loud. But there's nothing technically wrong with it. It's fine. The story, we're going to keep going. But when my brain catches on something, and it could just be the way I think, I'm just going to point it out and try to figure out why I struggled. All right. So as she realized that, she decided that she needed to find out for sure. Was Diego de la Vega, the most renowned bachelor in California, the man Donna Maria, the Pueblo's matchmaker, had once declared hopeless and unromantic, really in love with her, or was her mind simply playing tricks? All right. It's beautiful. I love it. But then again, I do appreciate long sentences. I'm so guilty. I've written paragraph long sentences with 7 or 8 commas. It's ridiculous. I don't do it anymore because I just can't let myself get away with that anymore. It's lovely, but it's long. So it probably could be 2 sentences. You can read back through it and figure out where that could be. And again, that's trivial. We're going to keep going. Diego, she said as she exited with Mendoza's food. I need to go to San Pedro tomorrow for some shopping. Do you think I might convince you or your father to accompany me? I'd be happy to, he instinctively replied. I also have a few supplies for the Guardian I need to buy there. Excellent. We'll be leaving at 7 in the morning, she informed him as she turned around, giggling on the inside and wondering if he would be in time. Isn't that a bit early for you, Don Diego? Mendoza wondered as he sat down and started eating. Just a little bit, Sergeant, but I already promised, so I guess I'll have to do an effort to wake up in time, he replied. So I usually say on time, and so I think my brain is catching on in time. In time is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The reason I struggled over those is because my brain says on time. But I just want to explain why I suddenly struggled with something that was going smoothly. Okay. Love this so much. It's just so cute. I'm really enjoying this whole thing. Diego arrived at 6:45 at the tavern just as Victoria finished her morning tasks, had given the proper instructions to Pilar, and was preparing for the day's journey. You're already here, she asked, somewhat baffled. Arriving early, her mind silently whispered. Men in love are always eager to see their beloved. I thought I'd help you with the wagon, he replied with a grin. Thank you, Diego. It's in the stables with my mare, she answered. He nodded, and some 5 minutes later the wagon, to which Diego had harnessed both Esperanza and Victoria's mare, was waiting in the plaza for the taverness. Do you need help with the containers? The caballero asked as she came carrying a couple of baskets. Yes, thank you, Diego. I need help with those barrels, she answered, indicating the 2 wooden monstrosities she was certain he'd asked for someone's help to lift. He surprised her by carrying them all by himself without any trouble. Trying to impress me, her mind continued. Men in love always try to impress the women they are courting. Is Diego courting me? She then asked herself. Senorita, Diego bowed, offering her his hand to help her climb into the wagon. Being chivalrous, how is it I never noticed before that he only behaves like this towards me? She wondered. Diego and Victoria left the Pueblo at 7 o'clock sharp, heading for the port of San Pedro. So, she asked, how have you and your father been coping with the entire Gilberto affair? Why did I ask such a thing? She wondered as soon as the words had left her lips. Well, he answered, Father is more affected than I am, I must admit. He has lived his entire life wishing for another child, yet never knowing if he already had one. Now he must come to terms not only with the revelation that a son of his was stolen at birth, but also with the fact that he had tried to kill us both, without ever questioning the lies that the woman had told him. Victoria remained pensive for a few moments, unsure of what to say. She was not off to a good start. Diego, she said, trying to take the bull by the horns, I was thinking about the conversation we had yesterday, about love and how to know one is in love. You have, he asked, glancing fugitively at her. I think we furtively might be. Furtively? Let's see. Yes, I am pulling up a thesaurus for us. This is so cute. Okay, furtively. Furtively. Okay, I think we mean furtively here, and that is spelled Furtively, meaning in a way that attempts to avoid notice or attention. So, yes, we mean furtively and not fugitively. Okay, and here we're going to keep right on going. Yes, well, I was wondering, why have you decided not to tell the woman you are in love with that you love her? What's stopping you? Oh, I guess. Uh, I did say she was in love with another man, didn't I? He replied. You did, but still, don't you think she has the right to know? Period. So that she'd have the chance to make her own choice? Who knows? You might be surprised by her decision. She uttered, her words surprising even herself. What in the world am I doing? I've already promised Zorro to marry him. I don't think so. I have fierce competition for her heart. Not to mention she is already engaged to be married, Diego replied, surprising Victoria. I guess that settles it, she concluded. It's not me. I am engaged, but nobody knows that except for Zorro and me, which means Diego is talking about someone else. How foolish was I to think that he's in love with me? Why does the idea that he is not make me feel so sad? Was I hoping he was? Am I really that petty to want him to love me, even knowing that I would never respond to his feelings? Or do I? Am I in love with Diego? She glanced at him with a thoughtful stare. He caught her glance and smiled innocently, that silly smile he puts on every time he doesn't understand something. How could he? Look at him. He's completely clueless. I am to marry Zorro. I love Zorro. I can't be in love with two men at the same time. But Diego is so sweet, and he's always there for me. He even woke up early to come with me this morning. But Zorro is always there for me. Whenever I need a hero, he's my hero, and Diego is my friend. That's all we are to each other, friends. And one day we'll each be married to someone else, and I don't know, eat together at the tavern? Victoria's face turned sour at imagining Diego trying his imaginary wife's food as she giggled and kissed him. Oh, how I despise her. Couldn't he have made a better wife choice? And why was Zorro just looking at her like that? Is Zorro going to leave me for Diego's wife? Are the two of us going to wind up sighing from the tavern's terrace at seeing Zorro stroll with the woman through the plaza? Victoria shook her head, realizing her imagination was running rampant. Okay, this is cute. Okay, this whole paragraph is great. One suggestion, I'm not going to go through and count them all, but I'm going to point this out. And I've noticed and I've caught myself doing this as well. So we say that when we use exclamation points, we are shouting, we are yelling, or we're using emphasis. Now, we're building. She's building here in her head, obviously, and I love how her imagination ran rampant there. It was great. You almost didn't need to say it was, except that she realized it. But even without that, it's cute. It's very cute. I would swap out some of these exclamation points to just go with periods. The build is there in the writing, and you could use exclamations, but I would use fewer of them so that they have more impact. They have more emphasis. Be stingy with them. That is something I learned a while back and has proven very helpful. So yeah, you want those, and you don't do this, but I do in the past have used italics to emphasize certain things, almost to emphasize tone of voice or something like that. But yeah, so be stingy with your exclamation points. You've got a bunch in there. I'd go back and look at that, and that's it. Other than that, that is great. So the writing here is very good. What is she like? Victoria decided to ask him. The woman you were in love with, she clarified, looking wide-eyed at the caballero next to her. What's she like? She's the most beautiful woman I've ever met, he replied, looking in front of him with a smile on his face. Victoria seemed saddened by that affirmation. He had met many women in all the countries he had seen. Certainly there were many more beautiful than her. Plus, judging by that Zafira woman, he probably liked blondes. Who was blonde and beautiful in Los Angeles? She wondered as her mind started going through the entire female population of the Pueblo. What if she wasn't even from Los Angeles? Then she asked herself, he travels almost weekly to San Diego, or so he says. What if he truly goes there or somewhere else just to see her? Oh, this is useless. Both inside and out, he added just as he finished the previous statement. She's kind and stands up for what she believes in, the caballero continued. She's great with children, and her eyes are like two endless pools in which I feel lost every time I look at her. She's also... So she's the perfect woman, Victoria interrupted spitefully. Oh, I want to laugh. Okay, sorry, I'm going to keep reading. Of course, Diego de la Vega would only fall in love with someone perfect, she told herself. For me, she is. I don't think I'd ever be able to love anyone as I love her, he replied with a kind smile, feeling he was seconds away from confessing the truth to Victoria. Just then, as he turned his head to meet her eyes, a shot rang, and a bullet planted itself in the barrel behind them. Bandits, he exclaimed as he saw two masked men riding towards them. Diego steered the horses into a gallop, hoping to escape the attackers. Another shot rang, and a second bullet injured the side of Victoria's wagon as the caballero abruptly stopped the horses, allowing for the two men to get near. What are you doing? We need to flee, Victoria yelled at him. Give us all your valuables, one of the bandits said as he approached the wagon, pointing their pistols at them. Or what? Diego asked as he stood tall, folding his arms across his chest. The two men exchanged a puzzled look. Or we shoot you, one of them stated. With what? You just emptied your pistols, Diego contradicted them. Again, the men looked at each other with a somewhat dumb expression on their faces. The caballero rapidly reached for a musket he had hidden behind the seat, pointing it at them as he patted his own back for having had the foresight to take it with him. Pause. Okay. Really quick. I thought I noticed this a little bit back, but I overlooked it because the writing is so good. But, and I'm going to throw this out there because only the author is going to know truly. And a few sentences back, I noticed it. Let's see if I can go back since I'm seeing it a second time. This sounds like it is in Diego's point of view when we have been in Victoria's point of view thus far. So we were with Victoria in her head, and all of a sudden we jumped over to Diego's. If you love it, you can leave it. I do switch point of view a lot in my stories, but I typically do it in chunks, like in segments when we flip back and forth between, characters, where I've given you one character's entire story and perspective, and then switch over to another character's perspective. If sometimes progressing the scene, sometimes looking at their point of view in the same scene we just did. I've done exercises in both, and it just reads a little bit like I feel like we're getting into Diego's mind right here, which we've not been in. I haven't noticed it before except for like a couple sentences back, and I let it go because I thought it was a fluke. Let's see. It was very small. I kind of want to keep going, but there was right here. He replied with a kind smile right here, feeling he was seconds away from confessing the truth to Victoria. That is in Diego's point of view as well, and that's where I first noticed it. I thought if it was just one line off, I wasn't going to mention it. It could have been it. I took note of it, and I wasn't sure. But as it's just happened again, now I'm kind of thinking we're starting to slip into Diego and then Victoria's points of view between lines, which can be disruptive to a reader. And if you should go on to write professionally, it's really frowned upon. You'll hear a whole bunch of grief over it. I've had a professional work that is not fan fiction that I intended to publish, and I actually have to take out 3 whole characters' points of view and rewrite large chunks of the story because it was ill-advised for publishing purposes to have multiple points of view the way that I had written it. And it wasn't between line to line, it was actual chapters, and they wanted it to stay all with one character's point of view. Or to consistently flip back and forth between points of view, like one chapter is in one character, the next chapter is in the other character. And they really, really shun it if you do more than 2 characters, which I have role play sagas where we have worked with 25 characters. We don't show all of their points of view, but whoever it is telling that scene will be a good chapter in that point of view. And because it's fan fiction, you can do what you want. But I want to note for educational, for writing, learning purposes, that we're in the middle of a story and twice we've flipped over into another character's point of view. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to note it and we're going to keep going. Let's see. So that they just emptied their pistols. The men are looking at each other. I forgot how funny Zorro can be. He's so funny. Okay. Now, senores, I suggest you put down your guns and ammunition, and I might be convinced to let you live, he replied. How do we even know that musket is loaded? One of the thugs asked. I can show you it is, but I have no intention of wasting my bullets as you have, so do inform me who wants to get shot first. Diego replied, and Victoria looked at him with a mixture of pride, puzzlement, and amusement. No, we believe you, senor, one of the thugs replied. Excellent. The guns, please, the caballero insisted. After exchanging another glance, the two men did as asked and let their guns fall to the ground, then added the gunpowder and the bullets they had on them to the pile. Now be so kind as to tie each other up. Really quick. The caballero insisted, period. I would omit the and go, after exchanging another glance, the two men did as asked and let their guns fall to the ground. I guess you could keep the gunpowder and bullets, adding them to the pile, or it could be somehow made into its own sentence. I'm not going to linger on it, again, because the story is too good and I want to keep going. I'm just going to point the things out and we're going to keep rolling. About an hour after they had left the pueblo, Diego and Victoria returned. The two bandits tied up on their horses, which were walking behind the wagon as the taverness was keeping watch on them. I would probably break that into a couple sentences. Your writing's been nice and tight up to this point. So let's see. After about an hour after they left the pueblo, Diego and Victoria returned, period. The two bandits were tied up on their horses. I'd probably omit this. Walking behind the wagon as the taverness was keeping watch on them. So in the Zorro kind of idea here, the keeping the fandom in mind and what little I know about it or what I can remember, the formality of writing lends to not using conjunctions and not skipping out on words, but being wordy. Honestly, the way they speak is kind of wordy, and that's just how it was. So that's that. Actually, if it's done purposely, and I don't know, it probably is because it's formal speaking. This is written by the author, though, and you want to keep the tone. After about an hour, they had left the pueblo. Diego and Victoria returned. Period. The two bandits tied up on their horses. The two bandits were tied up on their horses. I would take out the which were and say walking behind the wagon as the taverness kept watch on them. That's what I would do. It was wordy in a formal writing style. I can see that. There's nothing technically wrong with it. But when I'm reading it, it's a long sentence that could be made to two sentences. And to read it smoothly, I'd make those slight alterations. We're going to keep rolling. De la Vega, what is this? De Soto asked as exiting his office at hearing the commotion their return had stirred in the plaza. Okay, I would probably take out the at and just say De Soto asked, exiting his office at hearing the commotion their return had stirred in the plaza. And I might even suggest at this point, when we're writing action, like there's excitement here, there's drama, there's something happening, or even in your fight scene back there, which read pretty darn well. When we write action, we keep it short and tight. We don't. You're doing great at not having thoughts and all that other inner dialogue during action, but your sentences can also be short. It's completely okay to have them very short and blunt when you're writing action. De Soto asked, I almost say instead of exiting his office at this point, he's dashing from his office or something a little more less wordy that gets the job done. De Soto asked, dashing from his office, or De Soto asked, or even just omitting the at and just saying exiting his office, but exiting seems slower to me. And so I'm imagining this man running out the door. So that's why I was kind of going with dashing or running, just flat out saying running. It doesn't matter. De Soto ran from his office at hearing the commotion. There, I would even leave out their return had started in the plaza. I would probably just go with that hearing the commotion again. So we're going to use less words when we're writing action, and we're trying to maintain the intensity of the situation. And this one's not super intense at this point, but there's drama in the court, okay? There's drama in the court. All right, well, alcalde, these men attacked Victoria and me as we were heading for San Pedro, but were stupid enough to empty their guns before they reached us. So I decided to turn the tables on them, he replied triumphantly. I had no idea you even knew how to handle a musket, the alcalde replied. I don't, actually. I mean, I do know how to use one, but I confess my aim is dreadful. They, however, didn't know that, did they? He replied, lying quite convincingly. Well, congratulations, you idiots. You got duped by the only man nobody is stupid enough to fear around here, DeSoto uttered with a chuckle and some newly found appreciation for Diego. Well, congratulations, you idiots. You got duped by the only man nobody is stupid enough to fear around here. Maybe we need a comma. I don't know. You got duped by the only man nobody is stupid enough to fear around here. Why am I not reading that? You got duped by the only man nobody is stupid enough to fear around here. Okay, my brain hung up on this. I am not entirely sure why. There's nothing technically wrong with it. My brain is stuck here for some reason. You got duped by I get it. I know what it's saying. But when I first read it, I'm trying to figure out why when I first read it, I got hung up on it. And I have the feeling the problem is somewhere right here. Only man, nobody. The only man, you got duped by the only man no one is stupid enough to fear around here. It's no different than nobody. That doesn't really change that much. Okay. Don't know why. My brain got hung up on this one. We're going to keep rolling along. Alcalde, Mendoza intervened. Those are the men on the posters we just received from Santa Barbara. The ones who have just killed that judge. They have a 7,000 pesos reward on their heads. What? DeSoto asked, almost unable to believe his ears. Then checked the posters. Sergeant, organized their transport to Santa Barbara for the trial. You were lucky, De La Vega. These two are bloodthirsty cutthroats. I guess I am quite lucky. Oh, dear. Victoria, would you mind if we go to San Pedro another time? I feel rather lightheaded, Diego uttered. Of course, Don Diego, come. I'll cook you some breakfast. You probably didn't get to eat this morning, which would explain a lot, she decided. We can go to San Pedro another day. DeSoto chuckled at seeing the face his former schoolmate made at finding how close he had come to being those men's victim. Then the thought hit him that the useless caballero had just caught two bandits worth more in rewards than his nemesis. That spoiled his good mood. Okay. Oh, our last sentence here. It's really long and wordy. Let's see. DeSoto chuckled at seeing the face his former schoolmate made at finding how close he had come to being those men's victim. I'd put a period there. Then the thought hit him that sometimes if I'm doing that and I have to do that and I can't figure another way around it, I put a comma between the two that's. The two that's. Then the thought hit him that useless caballero had just caught two bandits worth more in rewards than his nemesis. That spoiled his good mood. Okay. This story is really cute, very well written. I haven't watched the Zorro, either the old one or even the movies, in years, and yet this instantly brings it back to me. So that's a major, major compliment that I am completely refreshed and drawn back into the fandom from reading that. So well done. I'm going to leave you a nice kudos here and a good compliment. And thank you for letting me beta read and Concrit for you today. Your story was very, very good. It's very well written. It's perfect. You got the humor. You're in character. The writing is good. It's very clean. This is a really good fan fiction that deserves to be read. So everyone come out there and check out, we're back up here, Love Spice by CMA6725. I'll share a link to the story in my comments. See you next time.